President Trump has just dropped a bombshell on Ukraine and everybody is freaking out right now. You see, a couple of days ago, President Trump and Putin had their first phone call, and after that call, it looks like Trump has changed his mind on a lot of things. And that's not good news for Ukraine or President Zelensky. Now in this video, we'll dissect what exactly happened in that phone call, what Trump said publicly afterwards, and how Zelensky is reacting to all of it. Also, before we get into that phone call, I want to show you guys an interview clip of Donald Trump that he gave to Fox News just a day before talking to Putin. In this interview, he used some really bad words while referring to Ukraine. Take a listen to this.
Zelensky says that he's up to doing some equity deal where you get rare earth minerals or something.
I've asked them, look, the United States is in for more than $300 billion, probably $350, and Europe's in for probably $100 billion. We're in for more than twice, maybe even 3 times what they are. This should have never happened. Biden should have never let that happen. You know, it happened with NATO, and I got in and I equalized. I had it equalized and raised hundreds of billions of dollars. NATO became very rich after me. We were paying almost all of NATO. It was unfair. We take care of the military, and then they take advantage of us on trade. You know, they're very tough. I'll tell you what, the EU on trade is horrible. But NATO was very unfair, and I made it fair. I said, look, if you don't pay, we're not going to defend you. And the money came in like nobody's ever seen before.
So you think there's a deal with Ukraine?
Just left. He said, I've never seen anything. When Trump left, all of a sudden the money started rolling in. These people were all delinquent. By the way, Canada is a very low, you know, we were talking about Canada. Canada is just about the lowest payer in the whole thing, which is very unfair. You know why they're low payer? Because they think the United States is going to take care of them. You think that's fair? It's not fair.
Yeah. Ukraine, though, you think you can get a deal? Do you keep sending American weapons until you do?
No, what I'm saying is the following. They have tremendously valuable land in terms of rare earth, in terms of oil and gas, in terms of other things. I want to have our money secured because we're spending hundreds of billions of dollars. And, you know, they may make a deal, they may not make a deal, they may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday, but we're going to have all this money in there, and I say, I want it back. And I told them that I want the equivalent, like $500 billion worth of rare earth, and they've essentially agreed to do that. So at least we don't feel stupid. Otherwise, we're stupid. I said to them, we have to get something. We can't continue to pay this money.
They may be Russian someday, or they may not be Russian someday. Now that really is a bad choice of words by President Trump, especially considering the false narrative Putin has been pushing, that Ukrainian people want to be Russian. Because in reality, nobody in Ukraine wants to be Russian. I mean, why would anybody want to go under a dictator who just destroyed their homes and their cities in hopes to take over their land and resources? So yeah, that was a bad choice of words by Trump in that Fox interview, but that was nothing compared to what he said the very next day. Now, this Fox interview was aired on February 11th, and the very next day, Trump had his phone call with Putin, and immediately after that, he did a press conference as well. Now, the thing here is that even before all this happened, things had already started going bad for Ukraine, starting with the Pete Hegseth press conference. Pete Hegseth, who is now the U.S. Secretary of Defense, gave some pretty harsh statements regarding Ukraine. Take a listen to this.
We want, like you, a sovereign and prosperous Ukraine. But we must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective. Chasing this illusionary goal will only prolong the war and cause more suffering. A durable peace for Ukraine must include robust security guarantees to ensure that the war will not begin again. This must not be Minsk 3.0. That said, the United States does not believe that NATO membership for Ukraine is a realistic outcome of a negotiated settlement. Instead, any security guarantee must be backed by capable European and non-European troops. If these troops are deployed as peacekeepers to Ukraine at any point, they should be deployed as part of a non-NATO mission, and they should not be covered under Article 5. There also must be robust international oversight of the line of contact. To be clear, as part of any security guarantee, there will not be U.S. troops deployed to Ukraine. to further enable effective diplomacy and drive down energy prices that fund the Russian war machine. President Trump is unleashing American energy production and encouraging other nations to do the same. Lower energy prices, coupled with more effective enforcement of energy sanctions, will help bring Russia to the table. Safeguarding European security must be an imperative for European members of NATO. As part of this, Europe must provide the overwhelming share of future lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine. Members of this contact group must meet the moment. This means donating more ammunition and equipment, leveraging comparative advantages, expanding your defense industrial base, and importantly, leveling with your citizens about the threat facing Europe. Part of this is speaking frankly with your people about how this threat can only be met by spending more on defense. 2% is not enough. President Trump has called for 5%, and I agree.
Now, this presser came as a shocker for Ukraine. The Ukrainian public started freaking out over what was said by the Secretary of Defense. I mean, it was bad, but really, it was nothing compared to what Trump said in his press conference after talking to Putin. Take a listen.
Meeting with Vladimir Putin, and were there any preconditions set to agree to this meeting?
No, we had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour this morning. I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after that. And I think we're on the way to getting peace. I think President Putin wants peace, and President Zelensky wants peace, and I want peace. I just want to see people stop getting killed. We're very far away from that particular war, but that's a vicious war. Probably 1.5 million soldiers killed in a short period of time. I've never seen anything. I have pictures that are, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe what you have to look at. Young, beautiful soldiers that are just being decimated. And it would be nice to end it immediately. But we had a very good talk with, people didn't really know what President Putin's thoughts were, but I think I can say with great confidence he wants to see it ended also. That's good. And we're going to work toward getting it ended, and as fast as possible. It's a horrible situation going over. It's flat land, and the bullet goes off, and the only thing it can hit is a body, a human body, a young human body. And they're losing just tremendous numbers of mostly soldiers. Just the cities and towns have been largely demolished. It's a shame what's happened to that country. It would have never happened if I were president. That I can tell you. Would have never happened. It's to look at that. And October 7th would have never happened either, by the way, the Middle East. But we'll get it. I think we'll get it. We'll get something done. We're going to be meeting. Actually, tomorrow they're meeting in Munich, as you know, and we're going to have some other meetings. And I'll be dealing with President Putin largely on the phone, and we ultimately expect to meet. In fact, we expect that he'll come here, and I'll go there, and we're going to meet also probably in Saudi Arabia. The first time we'll meet in Saudi Arabia, see if we can get something done. But we want to end that war. That war is a disaster. It's a really bloody, horrible war.
Now, before moving on to the next statement, I just want to say here that maybe Trump shouldn't really be inviting Putin to the White House when he's busy invading another country. A war criminal coming to the White House will not be a good sight for anybody and a PR disaster. Anyways, moving on, here's a clip of Trump's answer to if Ukraine would be allowed NATO membership in the future.
I don't think it's practical to have it, personally. I know that our new Secretary of Defense, who's excellent, Pete, made a statement today saying that he thinks it's unlikely or impractical. I think probably that's true. I think long before President Putin, they said there's no way they'd allow that. This has been going on for many, many years. They've been saying that for a long time, that Ukraine cannot go into NATO. And I'm okay with that. I just want the war, whether they are or they're not. But it certainly would seem to be that most people have said that that is something that's not going to happen.
Now, I don't understand why Trump is saying all this publicly. When you're the president of the strongest country in the world, you don't go into negotiations pre-announcing everything you're willing to give up, because by doing so, you lose all the leverage. And while dealing with a country like Russia, you're going to need a lot of leverage. Now, in a situation like this, where Putin already knows Trump is willing to give in on all his demands, he's going to push for even more. Also, another thing that's a big topic of discussion surrounding the negotiations has been the fact that Ukraine's peace deal seems to be happening without Ukraine. The same thing was asked from President Trump, and he really twisted his answer to that question. Take a listen to this.
Do you view Ukraine as an equal member of this peace process?
It's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace. I said that was not a good war to go into, and I think they have to make peace. That's what I think.
Now, that was a crazy answer, because it's about Ukraine. It's Ukraine's peace deal we're talking about here. And for him to even think about whether Ukraine should have a seat or not is just insane, because that's exactly what Putin wants. Putin is too afraid to face Zelensky, because after all, Zelensky is an elected leader of a democracy, unlike Putin, who keeps getting reelected every time with 96 to 98% of the vote. I mean, if someone wins every time by such large margins, it's pretty clear what's happening. And then if any real opposition stands against him, like Alexei Navalny, they just disappear completely. This is the kind of democracy Putin runs. And knowing all of this, Trump is still giving Putin everything he wants. Supporting a country that's not even a democracy while denying rights to Ukrainians, which is actually a real democracy, is just not okay. Take a listen to this.
Towards Zelensky ceding territory or exchanging territory in any agreement to end the war?
Well, he's going to have to do what he has to do, but, you know, his poll numbers aren't particularly great, to put it mildly. He's got a country where, you know, it's been savaged and attacked, and he's got an army that's been very, very brave, actually, despite the fact that, you know, we've given him, in my opinion, $350 billion. That's what the real number is. You don't hear that number. And Europe has given, in my opinion, $100 billion. And they've done it in the form of a loan. And I have a Secretary of Treasury right now who's actually quite brave. He's over in Ukraine on a train. And there's a lot of things happening around that train that aren't so good. And he's going there to get a document done where we're going to be assured that we're going to, in some form, get this money back, because we're putting up far more money than Europe, and Europe is in far more danger than we are. We have an ocean in between. Europe has nothing in between. You know what they have in between? They have Ukraine in between. So wait a minute. So, as you know, Europe is putting up money, and they're getting it in the form of a loan. And the United States under Biden didn't do loans. They just handed money every time somebody walked in from Ukraine. They just handed them money foolishly. This should have never happened. It should have never started. And once it did, other things should have happened. Other things should have taken place. So we're getting security on our money. We're going to have it secured by, they have rare earth, and they have oil and gas, and they have a lot of other things. And we're asking for security on our money.
Now, this whole answer didn't make any sense. First of all, there was no need to bring up Zelensky's poll numbers, because that's Russian propaganda, and Trump walked right into it. Now, Ukraine is not having elections because of the country being at war. Another reason behind delaying elections is the fact that their constitution does not allow elections to be held during martial law period. And then another fact that Trump brings up is that Europe should be pitching in more in this war, because Europe faces more immediate danger from Russia as compared to the United States. So basically, what Trump is trying to say here is that we're further away from Russia, so it doesn't feel like it's our problem. That's what his presser sounded like, and that's exactly why people are freaking out right now. Because whatever happened in the last couple of days, it seems like the US is finally giving up on Ukraine. Trump is basically surrendering Ukraine to Russia, so they can just walk in and occupy whatever they want. Anyways, coming over to the next question, where Trump is asked, "Are you going to pause all aid to Ukraine?" He replies, "No, we're going to continue sending aid, but it has to be secured against their resources. It's like a loan in which we need something in return." Take a listen to this.
Does that mean you are not sending any more aid to Ukraine?
No, we are, but we want it secured, and the money is going to be secured.
All right, next, a reporter asked Trump if there's any possibility that Ukraine can go back to its 2014 borders. Now, before showing you what Trump said, I want to show you guys what Ukraine's map looked like before and after the invasion. As you guys can see on your screen, this is Ukraine's map from 2015, after Russia took over Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk. And this is what Ukraine's border looks like today in 2025. So basically, Russia is controlling a lot more land now and still continues to invade further. So here's what Trump had to say on this.
Sir, just to be clear, do you see any future in which Ukraine returns to its pre-2014 borders?
Well, I think Pete said today that that's unlikely, right? It certainly would seem to be unlikely. They took a lot of land, and they fought for that land, and they lost a lot of soldiers. But it would just seem to me, and I'm not making an opinion on it, but I've read a lot on it, and a lot of people think that that's unlikely. Some of it will come back. I think some of it will come back. Yeah, some of that land will come back.
Now, of course, we all want peace, but peace shouldn't come at the cost of Ukrainians losing their land or Russia winning by being the aggressor country. Because if Russia walks out of this negotiation occupying Ukrainian land and resources, it's going to destabilize the whole region. Because mind you, Russia is not the only aggressor in the region. China is also monitoring the situation very closely. And as many experts have called out, depending on how Russia comes out of these negotiations, it will really decide how early China goes after Taiwan. We've already seen what China did with Hong Kong. CCP now controls Hong Kong entirely. There's no one country, two systems policy anymore. There's just one party in Hong Kong, and that's CCP. So, if we show any weaknesses in dealing with Russia now, then Taiwan might end up Ukraine 2.0. Now, one great thing that came out of Trump's press conference was the fact that Europe is now finally realizing that it needs to step up its defense spending. In fact, if we look at NATO's budget, the US alone spends twice as much as all other NATO members combined, and that's exactly what Trump has been pointing out. Europe needs stronger defense systems, especially the countries that have borders with Russia. In fact, just a few hours ago, while speaking at Munich's Secretary Conference, Zelensky called for the formation of a combined European army to deal with Russia. It looks like Zelensky is not satisfied with NATO's role in the region, so he's asking for a separate European army to form. Take a listen to this.
Let's be honest, now we can't rule out the possibility that America might say no to Europe on issues that threaten it. Many leaders have talked about Europe that needs its own military, an army of Europe. And I really believe that time has come. The armed forces of Europe must be created. 3 years of full-scale war have proven that we already have the foundation for a united European military force. And now, as we fight this war and lay the groundwork for peace and security, we must build the armed forces of Europe so that Europe's future depends only on Europeans. And decisions about Europe are made in Europe.